Hey everyone, my name is Carter, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be trying something different. This is a totally unscripted video, but I thought it would be cool to do an in-depth kind of analysis of Luke's brand new RBC world record. He just set this, I believe yesterday. Yeah, I think it was, let's see, 14th of April. Yeah, so that was yesterday. But I thought it would be cool to kind of go over this and talk about, sorry, the time saves over the previous world record, where things can be improved still, and how strong this really is. So firstly, looking at the top 10, like Luke just has a massive breakaway, zero point 0.4 and a 0.8 from first to second, which that's just insane for such a long category like this. And you look at the rest of the top 10. We currently have six 230s, and I think we'll begin to see more over time. Shout out Enmead for his 230.998. That's awesome. But there really is a huge gap here. I guess there's kind of a gap between 7th and 8th as well, with Scorpion Sniffus, but really Luke is just kind of, he's just on another level. And shout out to Emil, he has the only mock bike time in the 230 range, so that's always cool to see. But yeah, let's go ahead and check this out. I really think this record could stand for a long time if nothing changes, if Luke doesn't come back to this. And really quick, let's look at the world record history. So I think you guys can see this, right? Yeah. So the cut here is just insane. It was like a 120, 130-ish cut from the previous record, a high 0.5 to like a low 0.4, or not a low, like a mid 0.4. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to go ahead and full screen, and we'll kind of go over all the places that I think are noteworthy. So right away, it's kind of interesting the way he starts. I always kind of rotate way more to the right, and then I wheelie nudge over. But this is the way he's always done it, at least from when I've seen his streams. And he did get a chain, which I think is pretty much mandatory. If you're going to, and you'll see in a moment, there's a stomper that you have to beat. Good first turn. He's kind of exactly where you want to be, kind of aligned at this green arrow. But yeah. So he swings out a little bit farther to the left here, but I don't think it matters too much because you just end up taking the apex a little bit differently. Really, you don't have to be perfect with these turns, but you can see he kind of ends up like kind of just a bit to the right of the ghost, but he is moving more to the left. And if you have any experience with this track, you know that this kind of thwomp section in lap 1 is kind of awkward to deal with. If you want to beat this second thwomp, you basically have to play perfectly, and unless you're Luke, and you aren't playing perfectly, you'll usually end up kind of going in between the thwomps. It's really tough to do. But when you're perfect like Luke is, it's not even an issue. I mean, he beats this by quite a margin. So that's kind of why the chain is mandatory here. I think if you drive as well as Luke does, you might be able to make it with a half, but you would kind of be cutting it tight. Yeah, so right here, let's just go back a little bit. Just a perfect alignment. I mean, this is exactly what you'd want. He takes it nice and tight, a little bit to the right of his ghost, but again, they kind of end up in the same place by the time he gets to the next turn. And yeah, let's move on. Okay, that's interesting. So there's a little bit of air time. You see the ghost here is a little bit higher. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. I think as long as you kind of end up in this corner here, it's not that big of a deal. But he gets the drift out perfectly. And this is a potential area for time save or time loss. Right here at the Superman. Pretty difficult to deal with. I do want to go watch the Human TAS or RTA Strat TAS. It gets a 229.981. And I think this is really interesting, an interesting comparison. I think this is compared to the former world record. But there are a lot of different variations of the Superman that can either gain or lose a little bit of time. And you'll see what's really interesting is that, at least compared to the former world record, I'll actually slow this down here. Let's go like half speed. And we'll see what happens. It's a little bit different, but it does save time over the world record. He hits like a pocket of air time right here, and it swings you out a little bit higher. It gives you like this kind of You would think the airtime would be slower, but something about it is faster. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm kind of moving frame by frame. And he saves, I don't know exactly how many milliseconds. Probably, if I had to guess, like 30 milliseconds. But it's really hard to do. You can't really control that, at least to any reasonable extent. But you can see that's exactly how you'd want to do it ideally. I know the obvious problem with like RTA strat tasks is that the final time is always pretty arbitrary, and also the final time is arbitrary, and it's hard to say at like what point it's unreasonable. Like, it's unreasonable to expect every turn to be perfect, like an RTA task. So I mean, it's whatever, not a big deal. Anyway, so Luke doesn't get this. So I mean, that's a little bit of time lost, but it's really not a big deal at this point. So he's a little bit down. He's a little bit down after the ghost here. I'm trying to figure out what that's from. Okay, so the ghost is taking a little tighter. The shroom timing might have made a difference, but he ends up going out a little bit wider here than the ghost, and he's also down a little bit on the former world record. And this all looks really good. Yeah, so I actually don't know like how big of a difference this grass hit makes. Right here. It slows you down, obviously, but in return you take the turn a little tighter. It's hard to say. But I guess I would trust Luke's instincts that's kind of the optimal way of doing it. And something else that's interesting, this bridge is deceptively kind of awkward to maneuver around. Sorry, I thought there's someone at my door. But you can get these weird bounces sometimes, and if you bounce like right there, you're able to kind of nudge your wheelie without losing any time. It's not a big deal if you get the alignment right like Luke does. But something else worth noting is that there is a chain here, and you'll see this actually does kind of make a difference later in the run. But he gets the chain perfectly. Really solid double MT. And then this is something I think is really interesting. Just the way he takes this rail strat right here. This isn't what you typically go for, but he's able to make it faster. So for those of you who aren't like well versed in the game, first of all, let's notice the ghost is way over here. He's aligned. He's gonna hit the boost panel like right here. Luke is hitting it all the way over here. So somehow he has to end up on the rail with this ghost. And the way you do that is with this drift. You can visually, or not visually, you can audibly hear a hop that the world record, or the former world record, doesn't do. And it sends him lower. And look at this, he's nearly off screening the former world record. I mean, this is kind of unexplored time save, at least from my experience. No one to my knowledge has like really discussed this, but it's pretty obvious. I mean, you can see the ghost is down a little bit going into this, but Luke is quite a bit ahead right at the end there, and we will go ahead and check out this last turn now because I'm really curious. Gets a wheelie nudge. He ends up right on the corner there. As you'll see, he nudges in the air, and then he's right along this edge right here when he does his spin drift, and he gets it perfectly. So 178 lap 1. I want to compare that to the best split lap 1, which I have right here. It's a 158. So to put this in perspective, the fastest anyone has ever driven lap 1, this is 20 milliseconds slower. So he's right there with the best split. This is about as good as you could reasonably expect him to do. So 178, it's an incredible lap 1. All things considered, like obviously it has errors, but you can't expect perfection in a 3-lap run like that. But anyway, this is incredible. So he's, what did it say, 67 milliseconds? 67 milliseconds ahead of former world record. So if he just maintains that, he's already got a huge world record. But the chain on the bridge, it's notoriously kind of evil and hard to deal with. But, you know, Luke being Luke, he's played this track enough times that eventually he'll get a chain out on the second bridge. But this is actually kind of interesting because he does get the chain. But as you'll notice, he gets some airtime. And I know like the bar is kind of covering it, but he goes down to 93 kilometers an hour. So he actually does lose time here. And you can see the ghost catches up a little bit. So like the brief period of time that he's spending, I want to slow this down. The brief period of time that he's spending at 93 kilometers an hour, and then he has to land again, then he can start accelerating. And you can see the ghost is catching up. It's like he got a flat bridge, but instead of a chain, he got a half. I feel like that's a fair comparison. So the ghost catches up a little bit. It's unfortunate, but you can't really... The bridge is notoriously uncontrollable. So moving on, this is kind of the same alignment he had lap 1. The ghost is a little bit to the right. I think this is more ideal. I think the perfect line is somewhere between these, but I think I would prefer to be in the new world record spot right here than an old world record. Really well done. And thwomp is a bit of an issue. Or at least this thwomp. Actually, I think the second thwomp used to be a problem as well. Like, if you're in low 231 territory, this thwomp is going down, and it's kind of a similar situation to lap 1. And I remember a few years ago when world record was just barely beating this thwomp, but now being at a 230.4, like, it's not even an issue for Luke. But yeah, he gets a nice turn here. It was a little bit wide, but I think because the apex of the turn is a little bit, I think the ideal line is a little bit farther to the right, so you're not able to take this perfectly. So I think that's about as good as you can reasonably expect this turn to be. This all looks pretty good. Okay, this thwomp is interesting. This is going to be a real issue moving forward. But Luke is able to evade it pretty well. I want to look at the human RTA tasks, because this is an even bigger issue when you're on 229 driving. So let's skip ahead a little bit. Okay, so this is substantially faster than the current world record, and you can just outright beat it. But you can see the way he takes the turn is quite a bit different. He starts a lot more tight, so that way the apex of the turn is later, and you swing out wider like this. But, you know, at world record level right now, it is going to be an issue, especially if Luke wants to beat this further. And the way he takes the turn, let's see. Yeah, so he's forced to swing out a little wider, so it's actually kind of beneficial to be a little behind here, because you can take the turn in a kind of a more ideal angle. But it's not a big, this is like a good problem to have, honestly. So yeah, that's about that. Okay, let's go back a little bit. Okay, this is about as perfect as you could get. Honestly, if I were him, I would be a little nervous about this wall right here. But he avoids it well. And I kind of want to look at the super mid again. Okay, he's a little bit to the left here, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. As long as you don't get like a slip drift or anything coming off. Yeah, no, I think he's really fine here. And he gets the hop like you'd want. I'm not really an expert on this shortcut, so I can't say for sure whether this is like really good or not. My assumption is it can be taken a little bit tighter. But then again, like every shortcut can. So yeah, I think that's about as good as you could reasonably get. He gets the same bounce here. Oh, interesting. Okay. He gets the same bounce here that he got before. He doesn't need to realign, but like when I play this track, at least it's kind of awkward. When you get the bounce, it feels easier to get the chain when you don't bounce. But you know, Luke ends up getting the, what does he get? I think he got a half, right? Yeah, he was down to 91, as you can see. So he actually loses a little bit against world record. So that kind of shows there is a lot left on the table here. Like, Luke was up 67 milliseconds going into lap 2. Now he's down on world record. So .3 is definitely possible. Just from that alone, he's lost, you know, about, I would say 80 milliseconds so far in this lap too. Let's move on. Pretty tight double mini turbo. And this is what you're basically doing lap 1. Or not lap 1, sorry. In the former world record, he's not doing the drift trick. That seems like a more of a backup strat. But I think we'll see it more in the future when paces get faster. Interestingly, though, this fire pillar, it looks like it's going to be an issue on faster paces. But I actually want to go back to this human RTA test. And let's go to this point in the run. So lap 2, a little bit faster than world record. Doing the drift trick strategy, might I mention. And you'll see it's still not an issue. So I guess we don't have to worry about this. It's been talked about since like 2018 that it's going to be a huge issue in the future. But even at a pace that ends up being 0.5 faster than world record, you know, it's totally fine. And also keep in mind that doing this drift trick, it sends you lower than this other strat. So fire pillar isn't going to be an issue anytime in the near future. I mean, you would have to be substantially faster than this for it to actually be an issue. But yeah. Gets a nudge in the air, and he ends up right on the edge right here. Great last turn. He actually saves quite a bit of time. Like you'll see, he's probably down 15-20 milliseconds here. After the last turn, you can see the ghost swings out wider, and this is where Luke saves his time. So 14 milliseconds ahead. 186, let's see where that puts him compared to the BKS. So BKS is 072, and like we saw in earlier in the lap, he lost like 80 milliseconds through obvious driving errors. And by obvious, I mean it's still considering it's at world record level. It's very minor stuff for any other player. But for Luke, these are substantial time losses, as strong as this world record is. So, again, Luke is 14 milliseconds ahead. Let's go ahead and see what happens lap 3. He gets a chain. This is what you would have liked to see if you were Luke on lap 2. He gets the chain, and then here on lap 2, he got a bounce, and it sent him down to 93 kilometers an hour. Absolutely flat. No problems at all. Okay, this is about the same line as before. Former world record, I think, is a little too tight than optimal. You can see it down here. But this looks fine. And same thing as lap 1 and 2. You can just go under these thwompers. I almost said thwompers. But yeah. Okay, this is going to be an issue in the future. I'm actually curious because I don't remember what happens lap 3 in human RTA tasks. Okay, I guess it's not an issue because even with 229 driving, you're facing the thwomp right here. Okay, you do a spin drift. So you obviously do have to account for it when you're at this kind of pace. But you really don't have to worry about it quite yet. But that's just beautifully done. This is a very well made RTA task, might I mention. So yeah, going forward, the thwomp is probably going to be an issue. You probably have to account for it a little bit at this point, but I think moving forward, it's gonna be more important. Moving on to the Superman. Okay, this is a pretty substantial time loss, I think. It's actually a little hard to tell because the ghost is all the way back here. He's just so far ahead of world record. It's insane. I want to slow this down to half speed. Let's go ahead and see exactly what happened here. Okay, he gets really good airtime, and he's landing kind of on the second stair. And it looks like that's what sent him out farther. Yeah, so he got a little bit of airtime. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what happened. I'm trying to go back a little bit so we can see. Okay. So his landing. Okay, it looks like he's on the first stair. I think the kind of landing in between the first and second stair right there is what gives you that bounce. If he had hopped a few frames later, I'm going to go back up to normal speed. Yeah, so if he had hopped a little bit later, he probably would have gotten the hop out like normal. The slip drift loses time. Like, just straight up, it loses time. And it's not the spin drift itself that loses time, it's the consequences of the slip drift on the shortcut. You can see, like, let's go back a couple frames. Like, in lap 2 and lap 1, he was about a bike width to the left here. And he's entering way over here. And it's not a huge problem if you're able to kind of compensate for it and take the next turn super tight. But he's not, like, if you... Actually, I want to watch this really quick. So let's see how close he gets to this bush. So he's not touching the bush. He's a little bit outside of it. Okay, let's go ahead and compare that to, like, lap 2. So if I go back... Let's see where it ends up. So he is a little bit closer. Actually, this wasn't perfect either. You can go considerably farther into it. Let's check lap 1 really quick. Oh, and this actually kind of shows what I mean. You can see lap 1. He is like right up against this wall, right? Like he's to the left of this corner right here. Okay, that's a much better shortcut. You can't even see Funky Kong right now. That's how far you can go inside the bush. So he did lose some time lap 2 and lap 3. Let's go back to where we were. But he's still ahead of world record. So I guess former world record didn't do it perfectly either. Let's go back up to normal speed. Okay, this is a pretty crucial part of the run here. If he gets a drop here, he's basically going to be tied with world record. So whatever happens here is going to be kind of the determining factor for an improvement. He gets a bounce, and he does realign, which is not what he had to do last time. So that sets him up a little bit better. I think he actually lost a little bit of time. Let's see. Yeah, so he dips down to like 95 kilometers an hour instead of 97. So he accelerates back up. But what's more important here is that he gets the chain. Oh, I'm going to slow this down just because. So nudges, goes down a little bit, chains, speeds back up again. I can't really tell what former world record got. It was either a half or a drop. It actually looked more like a drop based on how much time Luke saved there. But that was considerably faster. Like, way faster. I mean, former world record is off the screen now. Okay, so this is a little awkward. This is not an ideal alignment. Normally you would want to be kind of around here if you were doing the normal strat. But Luke being Luke, he's able to make this work even though he's too far to the right. But this is it is a little sketch. So he points down as far as he can. He nosedives it. Minimize the air time so you can get to the ground faster. And he lands right on the edge. Right on the edge, but he makes it work. And he doesn't actually really turn during the air time here, which is interesting. I almost always do that. But this last turn is actually, I think, one of the best the best last turn I've ever seen. I mean, it's just incredible how tight he's able to take this on this kind of pace. I can't really tell exactly why this was so fast. I can't tell. I want to slow this down. We're going to go quarter speed. So he's lined up right here. He's right at the edge. He's about to spin drift. He bounces. He hits this edge here. But he just hits the ground much faster. And you can barely see former world record here. Like, here's... Wait, hold on. I actually don't know if you can see it on OBS because it was cutting off a little bit. No, you can. But it was cutting off a little bit right here. You can see his head. And he sends out, like, former world record is sent out so much wider here. So this last turn is a lot faster. It's hard to tell, obviously, because of the comparison. But, yeah, this was very well done. And that's Luke's 2:30.459. Lap 3 was an 0.95. And compared to BKS, that's 24 milliseconds off. So some of BKS gives, what, a 2:30.301? I mean, that's just insane. He's 150 milliseconds off of the sum of BKS on the longest track in the game. That's insane. That being said, I think he can still push down the BKS a little bit farther. I mean, we found a number of different errors throughout all 3 laps, despite these laps being close to BKS, with the exception of lap 2. Lap 2 can go down another 100 milliseconds, and that's already a 0.3. I think Luke can push this farther if he really wanted to. I'm actually curious what he says in his description. Lap 1 was obviously very strong, with mostly very good driving. Only time losses were the Superman, Shroom exit, the turn after the Shroom, and the last turn. The drift trick saved a lot too. Yeah, like we mentioned, the drift trick was important. Lap 2 was the weakest in this run, and borderline bad. Firstly, the bounce on the first bridge lost around 40 milliseconds. Yeah, we discussed that earlier. The castle was initially going well, but then every turn from the sliding thwomper room up to the stuttered wheelie landing, the ramp lost a bit of time. And last turn was good. I agree with that. And I'm actually curious. Lap 3 was going really, really well, and then, of course, I have to get a bad bounce at the bottom of the staircase. Yeah, we discussed the slip drift. Lost a significant amount of time, but not as much as it looked. 40 milliseconds minimum. Yeah, so like I said, the slip drift itself doesn't lose that much time. It's just the approach to the shroom that you have to take. And 2 of the shrooms were definitely improvable. But yeah, basically, he can do more than this. But like I said, like if we go back to this top 10, I mean, this is insane. A 400 millisecond gap. I think it'll take a long time before anyone else is able to catch up to him. I think Casey is a rising star in the community, though. I think he could definitely push this down further. Zeke definitely has untapped potential. I'm curious what Emil can get on Mach Bike. The track is better understood on a Flame Runner just because that's been the more popular vehicle. But I'm curious, being second worldwide, what he's able to do in the future. Also, Logan. We all know Logan could get 230 if he really played this. But yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. If you guys want more of these videos in the future, definitely let me know. This is totally unedited, off, no script or anything. So let me know if you want more of this in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.